And so Emma, as I said, became a very concerned citizen and decided to do what I have to say I totally admire her for. She stood in the elections, she managed to spread the word, and I think is a large part of why we're all here today. So with no further ado, I'll introduce you. Here's Emma.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's really reassuring to see how many of you there are here, because at the first meeting I went to in October of our group BCP 5G Free, there was only 7 people. And I said, oh my God, is this it? In the whole of Bournemouth, is there only 7 of us that know, or 7 of us that care enough to do something? So at the time, there'd already been quite a lot of following of the council proceedings and attending the meetings and providing evidence, and I had missed out on that part. But when I went, my first instinct was, oh my God, we need a massive information campaign. And I think it was about a week later that I saw that John Kitson was going to stand in the general election and get free delivery of leaflets to 50,000 people. So I said, oh, maybe I have to do that. So that's really why I did this, to get the information out there as far and as fast as I possibly can, because they're bringing this technology in really fast. They want to, I believe, have it in all UK cities by the end of 2020, and over the whole country, including rural areas, within the next 3 to 5 years. So this is really urgent, and it's really important that people find out what's going on, because it's only when we find out that we can do or say anything. So that's what this event is all about. And it was just going to be a community meeting, just people from our group discussing. And then I mentioned it to people, and people started saying, I want to come. So first John Kitson said he'd like to come, and he gave up his job a year ago to become full-time presenting about this. And he's travelled all around the UK and Europe. And so we're very lucky that he's here with us today to give his presentation. And we've got Rama here from London, who's going to be filming the event. And we've got Nick from our group, who's going to be presenting about the local issues. And we've got Colin, who I only just realised is from, he works at Bournemouth University as well as Southampton University, and is going to present. He doesn't know anything about 5G, but he's been doing research into EMFs and the harm caused by the existing levels of EMFs. So...
one is the National Toxicology Programme. A lot of damning evidence on that about the damaging effects of electromagnetic fields. And also the Ramazzini Institute and the studies that they've conducted. So please look into those when you have a chance. Paolo Vecchia, who runs ICNIRP, the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation, he even admitted that the guidelines that ICNIRP give out are only technical guidelines. They're not biological guidelines, and they're not intended as the last word on the matter. So that's something very important to consider. So just waiting for this to warm up. So yeah, I thank you. What a great turnout as well, I always say this, but give yourselves a round of applause for coming. Well done for coming, This is extremely important, and please, feel free to note down, obviously this is being recorded, but share this information with friends. Screen a documentary in your home on 5G or on electromagnetic radiation. There are plenty out there. I've included as many useful videos on my website as possible, which for those of you who don't know is 5gawareness.com, and I have the YouTube 5G Awareness. So, spread the word. This is extremely important, and time is of the essence here. So I think the more of us that wake up, the better. It's all about awareness. This is the key. Awareness among the population. So, I'll just...
Is this going on to YouTube?
Is it going to be posted on YouTube? Yes, it will be. Whilst we're waiting for the technology to sort itself out, there is a form going around asking for email addresses if you're interested in either helping to organise local groups. Is that the list? So if you could just hold it up to show people.
There's no paper to write on.
There's no paper to write on. Yeah, that's low tech for you. If it was 5G, you could all just do it mentally. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, and also just to remind you, as John said, his website is 5gawareness.com, and once again, specifically about Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, we have the Facebook page BCP 5G Free. Oh, there you go. Okay. What, do you think I'm going to trip over the cable and ruin everything again? I might do.
I can tell some jokes.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so you perhaps you've seen this chart, I don't know, or something similar, but it looks at the electromagnetic spectrum, and of course we've just covered a lot of that, so I'm just going to skip on through a few points. So microwave ovens operate up to 2.5 gigahertz. Take this out. There you go. And 4G operates up to 2.4 gigahertz, so it's like we're in a microwave oven being irradiated all of the time, okay? So this is with 4G. There are tens of thousands of peer-reviewed articles about this. You can not only look at the previous studies I mentioned, the Ramazzini Institute and the National Toxicology Program, but also bioinitiative.org, firemedical.org. There's plenty out there. You can go to PubMed. Lots and lots of research. So children absorb 60% more radiation than adults. And then, of course, we had a massive decline in insects over the last 20 years. And Lloyd's of London will not insure against harm from EMF. So one question you should ask to BCP Council, are you insured against the damage to health among all the people here? Yes. You've sent a Freedom of Information request. Yes. Okay.
Should be within the next 10 days.
Okay, fantastic. Because that's key, because obviously if they're not insured for damage, then, that's when litigation comes in, people are liable. So this is extremely important, and we know already that some councils up and down the country are admitting that they're not insured. So this is very important to look into. So just moving on, I'm going to show you this video from France where they're looking at the effect on phone masts on the livestock there on the farms, and we're going to have a little look at this one.
Il y a des endroits bien précis où c'est la mort assurée si on met les veaux clôturés à ces emplacements-là.
Les bêtes avaient un comportement bizarre, des vaches très fatiguées, qui ne voulaient plus aller manger, qui ne buvaient plus. Donc là, on a commencé à se poser la question.
Là, tous les 2 jours, j'enlève les morts. Très bien depuis 20 ans qu'un élevage sous une ligne de tension, ça provoque exactement les mêmes problèmes. Exactement, on connaît le problème.
Le sol, conducteur ou moins de conducteur. Il suffit qu'il y ait un pylône ou une antenne relais qui s'implante sur des veines de terre conductrices, une éolienne par exemple, et à 2 km plus loin, le bâtiment, tout d'un coup, ça ne marche plus.
Just to save time, move on a bit, and we're going to look now at the effect of what's happening in the United States with cancer cases happening in the schools with children. So we're not just seeing this effect on animals, but also human beings, and this is why I bring you the evidence here today.
The phone company Sprint shut down a cell phone tower on the campus of a California elementary school after some parents said it may be linked to several recent cases of childhood cancer. Now, those families at Weston Elementary School in Ripon claim the tower could have exposed their kids to harmful radiation.
My son missed growing up with his friends. My son lost all of his hair. It's not something that I wish on anybody, to watch their child go through what our children have gone through.
Kelly Prime's son Kyle was just 10 years old when he was diagnosed with kidney cancer in 2016. 5 months later, Kyle's friend and classmate Mason Ferrulli developed brain cancer.
14 hours to get the tumor out, and he had 5 weeks of inpatient rehabilitation. He had to learn to walk, talk, eat, everything all over again.
2 more kids at the school were diagnosed this year.
At what point are you saying, we ought to take a close look at the school here?
The moment that I found out that Mason had been diagnosed, it popped into my mind that something was not okay.
The moms believe the recent increase in cancer cases could be caused by radiation from radio frequency, or RF waves, coming from this cell tower located on the elementary school campus.
It is classified as a possible carcinogen. That tells us that there is some evidence out there.
I believe that everybody wants to believe our government. Technology is what it is, and it's growing, and it's growing out of control.
Ferrulli's son's cancer has returned, and he's now undergoing treatment. Prime's son Kyle is in remission, but he still undergoes scans every 3 months.
I've looked into his eyes, and I've looked at the fear that he has as a 9-year-old facing something, asking me, "Mom, am I going to die?" It would push you to fight as well. It would push any parent to fight. I won't stop until it's done, until that thing is gone.
For CBS This Morning, Carter Evans, Ripon, California.
So this could happen to you, your children, your family. And this is the point we have to raise with our councillors, with our elected officials. Do you have children? Do you have grandchildren? A few years ago, I lost my mother to a brain tumour. So that's what got me researching into this. And she had one of these wireless DECT phones, wireless landline phones. And after she was diagnosed, she died a few months later. And that's what brought me back to the UK initially, spent as much time as I could, but then I started to look more deeply into this. And around the country, we've got phone masts and we've got cancer clusters around these masts. And this is really serious. So, moving on, I'm just going to look at onto smart meters now. So, there's a lot of scepticism in the UK surrounding smart meters. And yet we're being told they're fine. It's a complete myth, according to Public Health England, regarding the health effects. And, you know, they're about the levels of radio waves they emit. Of course, they use radio waves, microwaves. This is what we're talking about, microwave radiation. And they're 1 million times less than the internationally agreed guidelines. Well, we're going to look into those in a minute, a little bit further. And, of course, we got the appeal, the EMF scientist appeal, and this has been signed by hundreds of doctors and scientists. Many of them have PhDs, and they're warning about smart meters. And yet with ICNIRP, we've only got about 13 individuals who are deciding on these guidelines versus these hundreds of doctors and scientists. So I would personally go with the hundreds of doctors and scientists who have a biological background. ICNIRP, as I briefly mentioned, the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. So that is the body based in Germany. I'm going to go into it in a minute, which our government relies upon for the official guidelines. So we're going to look at a video now looking at the effect of smart meters on our blood cells.
Well, industry has failed to do any peer-reviewed studies on smart meters and health effects, a growing body of independent research is now starting to accumulate.
In our second set of tests, we're using the smart meter. Before the exposure, we see the same thing as we saw in the first samples. Normal cell walls, fairly separated and looking healthy. So after 2 minutes of exposure in front of the smart meter at about 1 foot away, we see a totally different story. Sample 1, you can see a lot of degradation in the cells. The cell walls have been broken, and you see changes in the cells which are called mycoplasma. It shows a mutation to the cell. In the second sample, we see a different type of degradation to the cell membranes. You can see a corrugation here. This is called bottle cap formation, and it's known that this occurs due to oxidation or exposure to free radicals. So this third subject, when we did her sample, she had to be pulled away from the meter after 45 seconds because she complained about an increasingly severe headache. And here you see a phenomenon called rouleau, where the red blood cells are stacking up, which makes it very difficult for the blood to deliver oxygen to the tissues as they would be their normal function. Every single one of these is a degradation. Every single one of these shows a trauma to the blood cells. And that came from something, and the only variable was the smart meter.
What's going on here? This is a wireless device which is unproven scientifically, which all the evidence so far proves is dangerous or questionable, which should therefore be studied intensely before it's released to the public. Clever people called the technology smart to make it seem intimidating so no one would question it. Some smart ad man came up with that and got paid $300,000 to call it a smart meter so you would feel less knowledgeable, which they know we feel, and then you wouldn't question the smart people putting it in your house. So I call them not smart meters, dangerous meters.
So this is a documentary you can see. It's on my website on the videos page. I've tried to list as many of them as possible. If you want to find out how to officially get rid of a smart meter, you can see this on my YouTube channel. It's slightly covered there, but it's called How to Get Rid of Your Smart Meter in Days. And this is Marsha from Torquay in Devon. And basically the smart meter company, I think it was EDF Energy, they installed a smart meter and she wanted to get rid of it. She was told that she wasn't able to, it wasn't possible. So she said, well, I'll get a friend of mine to manually take it out. And then they told her, well, you'll be in a lot of trouble, you'll face a penalty. So she then told them, for every day that it remains in my property, because this is my property and this is your property, this smart meter that's in my property and I do not consent to it, I will invoice you, I will bill you for every day, and I'll send you the invoice starting from tomorrow. And EDF Energy, someone from their legal department, contacted them the following day and arranged to have it removed, literally within days. So absolutely amazing. It's got over 7,000 views now on the YouTube channel. And we're seeing smart meters extremely unpopular in this country. The government are really pushing everybody to have them, but you don't have to have them. And of course, people's bills are going up with them much more than when they're on analog meters, not to mention the damaging health effects, as we've just seen in the live blood analysis tests. So this is a very important video. Dr. Sarah Starkey, I'm aware there's another doctor that's looked at the guidelines, which originally came from AGNIR. I don't know the full abbreviation, full meaning of that, but that is being incorporated into ICNIRP guidelines. And Sarah Starkey did a breakdown on the official advice on radio frequency radiation, and it's very damning. And sorry? Okay, all right. So we've got Public Health England. Her conclusion was Public Health England was misleading the public. Conclusions were biased. They were hand-picked, the studies. Of course, ICNIRP ignore the non-thermal effects. The effects of microwave radiation, it's based on 5 minutes of exposure. But we're exposed 24 hours a day to wireless radiation now. And the UN has a specialized agency, the International Telecommunications Union. And there's something you should look up, UN Resilient Cities. The UN wants smart cities all around the world smart cities which will be bathed with radiation. And of course, the UN Secretary General is an electrical engineer. He's been warned by Claire Edwards about the dangers of 5G. He's doing nothing. And he set up a digital committee with Bill Gates, who's of course investing huge amounts in smart cities. Look into the UN. The UN is not looking after your best interests. So I strongly recommend you study further about that. The World Health Organization and the UN have ignored the EMF scientist appeal. This is very important. The Lancet. This is linked on my website on the downloads page. Planetary electromagnetic pollution. It is time to assess its impact. The Lancet is one of the most highly respected medical journals in the world. This has been published by 2 doctors, and it tears apart the ICNIRP guidelines and endorses the EMF scientist appeal. And they go into explain why EMF radiation is harmful to plants, animals, humans, all living things. Very powerful document to show to people. And now we're just going on to 5G, the Internet of Things. So 5G is undefined. This is very important. It's not this frequency to this frequency. 5G is the Internet of everything. So we're talking about sub-gigahertz frequency, so more 3G, more 4G, all the way up to millimeter waves. But some people believe, okay, it's just about high frequencies. It's just about millimeter waves. No, it's not. One of the technical parameters of 5G is densification. So if you have one 4G mast in your town, if you have 1,000 4G masts on the street lamps, that's 5G. 1,000 4G. So this is something we've got to understand here, because we can be tricked into saying, oh, don't worry, the LED streetlight antennas, they're 4G. No, they're not. If they're all over the place, it's because 5G is the Internet of Things. It's everything connecting with everything else. And I think, Emma, you were mentioning the other day, you had this mattress that had a microchip in it. So this is what we're talking about, everything being interconnected. Massive data gathering. Look up the Global Government Summit. They're talking about mass data gathering through the UN, smart cities. All of this is connected with 5G. So security can be hacked. You've also got the military applications. If you look up the Naval Research Institute, they've been testing electromagnetic frequencies for decades. This is weaponized technology. This came from the battlefield. It's not just Mark Steele talking about it. We're talking about Barry Trower, who's ex-Secret Service, ex-Royal Navy, Jerry Flynn, Nancy Hopkins. I could go on and on. This is military technology. It does not belong on our streets. So this is the FCC announcement of 5G. I've got a couple more clips after this as well, but this is extremely important that I finish this so that you get the information. And these are shortened down clips. So this is the ex-FCC chair announcing 5G.
Is that 5G will use much higher frequency bands than previously thought viable for mobile broadband and other applications. Such millimeter wave signals have physical properties that are both a limitation and a strength. They tend to travel best in narrow and straight lines, and they do not go through physical objects as well. But brilliant engineers have developed new antennas that can aim and amplify signals. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive, requiring massive deployment of small cells. I'm confident that the actions will lead to a cornucopia of unanticipated, innovative uses, and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important. And stay out of the way of technological development. Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate. The future has a way of inventing itself. Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future. We won't wait for the standards, and we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way. If something can be connected, it will be connected. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers. We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country.
That guy needs to go.
Yeah. Who agrees with that? Yeah. So, you know, when you have people like this in such high places, you have to be concerned. So, Senator Blumenthal, another very important video. I'll just go to this very quickly. He was quizzing the wireless industry on the future of 5G wireless technology and asking, have you done any health tests to prove that it's safe? And we're just going to have a very quick look at this.
But 5G, as you well know, also uses higher frequency waves that don't travel as far and will rely on a network of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of small cell sites. And the question then is, are there any health implications, any public safety implications to those additional sites that are likely to be located close to homes, schools, workplaces, and closer to the ground? My question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Berry, how much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? I stress independent research. Is that independent research ongoing? Has any been completed? Where can consumers look for it? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
But no, I'm not aware of any. So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here as far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So no health or safety tests because, of course, they know that it will never be proven safe. Military technology being rolled out in our streets will never be proven safe. So the Environmental Health Trust, this is another great resource for information. You've got Dr. Sharon Goldberg. I don't think I've had time to play this one, but she's an internal medicine doctor, and she's going through all the impact of EMFs on our health and 5G and how it will absolutely devastate health. So I strongly recommend you have a look at this one when you have time. Just moving on from that, we've got the space appeal as well, the EU appeal. And then, of course, what's happening now, we're seeing these in our streets, the LED street lights. And, of course, some of them will have sensors on, but they can easily be changed. Once they have this LED street light infrastructure up and running, this is 5G infrastructure, the LED street lights. They need these up to be able to run 5G. They can put these light sensors on, and they can easily be swapped over for antennas. So this is very serious. And I've seen a breakdown, you know, there's a breakdown, I put it on my YouTube with Mark Steele going through the LED street lights. Some people might think, oh, is it really a weapon system? Look at bigclive.com. He's done one on an LED street light. They look totally different. This is a box standard one. He's broken apart one. It's got all these chipsets, massive antennas. This is not a simple LED street light. And I just urge you just to look into it. So we've also got the study here, Exeter University, the effect of LED streetlights linked to breast and prostate cancer. Massive rises in cancer in areas where they've rolled this out over time because it interferes with the hormone production. It interferes with circadian rhythm. And so you should be wearing eye protection if you're driving or if you're around at night time with LEDs. Get some blue light protective glasses. And then, of course, you've got the effect on trees. More peer-reviewed research you can look up on the damage to trees. You can see where it's facing the mast, the branches, leaves are dropping off. This is one next to one of these street lights. And then the risks to leaves and the bush that's dying away there that's near to the smart meter. And, of course, studies on watercress showing having cress next to Wi-Fi routers, the cress won't grow. Damage to insects. This is another peer-reviewed study. So I could just go through study after study, and they're pitching all of this as having a low carbon footprint. So, how are we dealing with the CO2? What about growing more trees? Why do we need all this toxic technology that's supposed to deal? It's all a scam. This is the thing, and it's damaging our health. And you've got electric cars, massive sources of EMF radiation in cars, especially electric cars, the Tesla model with the lithium-ion batteries that are very explosive. That's why when you post something with a lithium-ion battery, you'll be asked to declare it because they can explode. And yet people are driving around in cars with these batteries inside. So this is Cisco showing how 5G will connect with the streetlights, with the autonomous cars. This is key, getting this infrastructure out for the rollout. And here it is confirmed about how they will implement 5G in cities. Every electric car is a connected car. And this is where we're moving. If we allow them to roll out electric cars and to criminalise diesel, gasoline cars, and then the climate emergency action plans that they're declaring across the country. And all I say is look at your climate emergency action plan documents, because it includes the rollout of these LED streetlights and electric cars. So be sceptical, just have a look at the documentation. University of Surrey, this is a very important study, 5G Innovation Centre, where they're looking at how they need to cut down trees for the line of sight. Now, they're cutting down over 100,000 trees so far over the last few years in this country to make way for 5G, because they're stating that the signal doesn't travel well. So I'm going to show you this very important video. This was Ordnance Survey looking at Bournemouth about how they are going to achieve the line of sight. So have a look at this. I'll just play the full video. This is my last video.
It's really important, this one.
We understand surveying data and we understand the importance of accuracy, repeatability as well, so it's all about quality. Our 3D models are made out of what are called a point cloud. Each one of those points you can identify and put attributes to it, so you can find a lot about the materials it's made of, the surface types, history of that data as well. So they're intelligent 3D models.
Our role in it was really to supply as many data sets as we possibly could for Ordnance Survey for the project. Everything from street lighting and lampposts and bus shelters all the way through to the types of tree growing in Horseshoe Common in the town centre of the Lansdowne.
The data that we provided to our project partners was really important because it filled in one of the key knowledge gaps in the project. The 5G Innovation Centre partners really worked out how radio waves would transmit around that cityscape. And then the Met Office were able to really drop real weather on top of that, just to show exactly how much that might change if it started to rain really heavily.
In terms of the signal propagation, it was really important for Ordnance Survey to be able to understand lines of sight for this project. And obviously, you know, if you have foliage or trees or even hanging baskets in the town centre, that can affect how the signal is transmitted.
To our knowledge, no other mapping technology would be able to do that efficiently. The Ordnance Survey 3D mapping with a high resolution and fast computing of this information, that was unique expertise that brought into the project.
The opportunities are endless having completed this project. Ordnance Survey have got a fantastic opportunity to exploit what we've learnt on the 5G project, not just for 5G, but for other initiatives as well. Digital built equipment, connected autonomous vehicles, Internet of Things, and underground asset. Having good, accurate 3D models just opens up so many doors for the future.
So Mike and I actually met a few of those. We saw a few of those individuals at a 5G promotion industry event where both of us spoke out not just about the cutting down of the trees, but about the increasing neurological illness that's happening. And Barry Trower, and I announced it to these people, to these individuals at this meeting in Bournemouth who were there, that 5G is genocide. Because you're seeing massive, look at how all our flying insects have disappeared. I've been up to Gateshead. There are loads of children bleeding from the nose who are having these antennas rolled out in front of their houses. There are brain cancer's gone up massively, stroke. And I've been to court cases up in Gateshead, which Mark Steele was at with the council. We're basically trying to get an injunction against him. And then in the second follow-up court case going for a custodial sentence. And this is for someone who's standing up for the rights of humanity. We need to get behind these people. We really need to take action, get the word out, and stop 5G, because otherwise we're in for an awful lot of trouble. And we don't have time. So just to go on, Huawei, of course, Theresa May allowing Huawei, a Chinese company, to take over our energy infrastructure. They're installing 5G. And then the charities, World Wildlife Fund, look into the charities that are supporting the rollout of smart meters, Friends of the Earth. Look at where you're spending your money. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, nothing but sustainable. See, it's being pitched as sustainable, but it's not, it's deadly. And of course you've got Barry Trower, who I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to skip through a lot of these. Professor Martin Powell, this is very important. He's Professor Emeritus of Biochemistry and Basic Medical Sciences at Washington State University. And he stated, this is one of the most well-known experts on the impact of electromagnetic fields. And he stated, what we know from human and animal studies, we probably have between 5 to 7 years until our collective brain function will collectively crash based on exposures we already have with 5G. And this is with 5G rolled out everywhere. I estimate it to be about 4 to 6 months. So we're already seeing mass decline in insects, all these problems. This is without 5G, but with 5G, there'll be no escape because everything will be communicating with everything else, pulsing microwave radiation. Of course, we've had progress in Glastonbury, precautionary principle. You need to really pressure your council. Go to your town council meetings if you are not already, and keep going. We've had, of course, Devon residents, some of who are here today. You can put your hands up. Thank you in this video. And then, of course, we had BCP Council, some of you who are here today as well. You're going to put your hands up and attending these meetings. Absolutely inspiring watching some of these. And then, of course, Totnes, we had the moratorium, and I got in touch with the Daily Mail, and this has gone out to 11 million people, and Kingsbridge and many other towns. So solutions, attend your local town council meetings, wire in your devices, get them checked with a meter. I do link to sites where you can get a discount through my site on meter or protective clothing, but with 5G, we have to stop it. There's no other choice. So hold a market stall in your local town. Gather names and emails. I think there's name list. You're gathering names and emails today in here of everybody. There's something going around. Great. Hold CEOs, MPs and councillors liable with a notice of liability. So Emma will be able to talk to you more about that. And then also, legal. You can take the legal option to sue. So there's my website. I appreciate any donations. I have a donation bucket, or you can donate directly to me. I don't charge for speakers' fees, or some people donate through my website. This helps me to keep going around the country doing these talks, because this is what I want to do until we stop 5G. And then, you can start a meetup page. And then we've got the Barry Trower event, very important, on the 3rd of February. We have Barry Trower, who has been campaigning for decades against 5G and the rollout of electromagnetic fields. So Charlie over there, you can put up your hand, Charlie. He's organising the Barry Trower event in Exeter. It's on my website on the events page in Exeter on the 3rd of February. So, oh, and the last thing is I have some stickers which people are welcome to, if they're interested, they can buy them, doing it £1 a sheet, and you can stick up stickers in all sorts of places to raise awareness. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And thank you so much for having me today. Well done, Emma, for running as an independent. And thank you for coming. Yeah, just to address the other topics as well. Gentleman at the back there, you mentioned about this thing being co-opted and this green technology. And I would say, yeah, we have to look into it. You know, we've got these climate emergency global action plans being encouraged to be pushed through our councils. And I just say, just look at this documentation. What does this involve? You know, electric cars, retrofitting of buildings, you know, with these smart technology. If this technology is dangerous, why are we letting it get rolled out? And you have to look at where the money's come from, you know, towards these things. Who's funding these different movements? So I'd really investigate this. And of course, the BBC Click documentary was absolutely disgusting. They were holding up a meter next to the mast. The mast was off. It was not emitting any radiation. They would have had to wear, if a mast, that sort of mast was already on, there's protective clothing that you actually have to wear to be able to go so close to those masts. Because you've not just got the heat coming off them, the microwaves, there's the damage to biology, and yeah, it's very serious. So, you know, people really have to research into this. It's very important.
Right.
And
putting in tens of millions of 5G antennas without a single biological test of safety has to be about the stupidest idea anybody has had in the history of the world. As before with John, he showed you Professor Martin Poole at the Washington State University. That was him speaking. So good afternoon to everybody. I hope, congratulations on and still many have gone home, congratulations on the big turnout. And do appreciate you being here. And I really think we not only need to do something in Bournemouth and indeed through the country, but we can do something. And a turnout like this, I hope, will inspire people to go out and do something against this very dangerous 5G. I just got to do a little disclaimer, and I do it for the others, because you must go out and do your own research. Can everybody hear me all right? Are you all right? Yeah. You must go out and do your own research. And anything I say that's health related, you must check with your doctor. And there's no legal intention, and I claim no specific expertise. So having done away with that, we can get into matters. I first got into 5G a couple of years, well, I say got into it. I became interested when I went to Ian Crane's AV, I think it was AV10, AV9, AV10, AV11 this year. And I listened to Mark Steele. I knew about 5G, but like probably some of the others, I had no idea of how potentially lethal, and I won't just use the word dangerous, I use the word lethal, 5G is and will be. And we just cannot ignore it. And one of the things that's come home was when John Kitson showed you Dr. Paul's presentation, who said 4 to 6 months before it takes effect. Now, if we go away and we're just going to leave it at that and say, oh, well, we have to wait till the BBC tells us that it's bad, then, we're going to be in trouble. And thank you, John, for an excellent presentation. And it doesn't override mine. I've got to hold it further away. Okay. Further down. It was a long time since I was a disc jockey, so please forgive me. So I see it as a journey. We've crossed the Rubicon. And there's two ways we can go. We can accept 5G and think it's all going to go away and it's just going to carry on as we are. People think we've survived 4G, 5G, but there are some incredible differences. So we're at the crossroads at the other side of the Rubicon, and we're embarking on a journey from which we cannot return. We must make a decision of what we're going to do. How, if we decide to do nothing, we might just be as bad off as those who try to do something. But there's lots of technology out there that can protect us. And we need to protect ourselves from electrosmog as well. So don't give up on it. Don't say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do, because there's plenty we can do. But it requires a lot of research and a lot of work. And that's not everybody's cup of tea, but for those that have turned up today, I think that's a magnificent effort. You can give yourself a round of applause again if you want, if you're feeling like that, but it's a spirit. We've got to get you going. I just want to give you an idea. We've been over the intensity of the radiation, of the RF frequencies. And I want to convince you more, for those that are still sceptic, of just what is happening. And we are in this Orwellian grid. Now, I've been on to, as many of you have seen and John showed, Stop 5G on Earth and in Space. And just a couple of things here. The millimetre waves, they're poorly received. So they've got to, actually, many of you will know this, so forgive me if it sounds patronising, but they've got to go approximately 100 metres, these cells on the trees, on the lampposts, on the bus stops, etc., so that we can pick up the radiation. So in Australia, there's a legal firm called Premier. Now, they are being successful, and what they are doing is that they're showing that the cell on the lamp, wherever it is an assault on you. Now, that will enter it, if we can show that, and if they can show that, into other legal domains of which we can protect ourselves. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. There's going to be base stations, devices, phones the phones themselves will contain dozens of antennas. And there'll be multiple beams in arrays, and they've got to cover every aspect, every altitude. So they've got to put antennas and receivers, and etc. In the USA, the power will be equal to 300,000 watts per gigahertz spectrum. This is between 10 to 1,000 times more powerful than the levels permitted at the current base stations. We have the ground base stations, we have the space stations, and we have the connection with the satellites. And currently there are 200 satellites that are servicing, according to the according to NASA, etc. And now there's going to be 50,000 satellites. 50,000 are planned. Also, you can download a film a lot quicker. Every satellite will be emitting 500 million watts, radiating all areas of the Earth. We have a Schumann wave, 7.83 hertz, and all of life is dependent on that Schumann wave. But when they go into space, they take that Schumann wave and generate it in space so that we can survive. All of Earth wildlife is harmonized to be dependent and has become dependent on the Schumann wave. Now, when we have this amount of power coming from the space, we will then disrupt considerably the amount of harmonization with ourselves, our wildlife, not to mention it affects the weather stations and so on. So let's move on. Funnily enough, the Lansdowne testbed project is now called the Smart Place Pilot Project. Now, do you think that's got anything to do with the Nuremberg Code when they use the word testbed? What's your thoughts? I'll make an implication. I can't make a conclusion, but you can see it's all smoke and mirrors. I think it's a national thing, so it's not just the local council that are playing those games with smoke and mirrors. Now, there's a project primarily supported by 1 million of Dorset's local enterprise partnership funds, plus 330k matching funding. There's funds to support smart place applications, but the point I want to make here is that these funds were supported before they had the call for evidence and the public, informed public consultation. So now just think about that. By the time we went to give evidence and by the time they came to the public, they'd already decided what they were going to do.
Regardless.
Yeah, I just sit on that for a moment. And that is cavalier, it's dishonest. And I would urge everybody here to clarify the timing of all this. When did you get this funding? When did you put this aerial mast in? When did you call for evidence? Did that evidence matter? Because you'd already started on the project. And then how does that leave us thinking about our local council? And it is happening nationwide. Complete lack of trust, because it's just plainly dishonest. There's no other word. It's devious. It's smoke and mirrors.
Not to mention illegal.
You're probably absolutely right, but I mustn't make that claim. Now, some of the things that are troubling is they're going to start the Lansdowne, well, I was going to call it the Lansdowne Testbed Project. Let's call it the Testbed Project, because we're integrated with the Nuremberg Code. But actually, it's a smart place pilot project. They're going to put a small temporary sub 6 gigahertz 5G trial network for the Lansdowne. They're going to put a small temporary sub 26.6 gigahertz trial network. And 900k, nearly £1 million has been secured for digital infrastructure. They've put ducted fibre around the Lansdowne. It's already installed. Now, fibre optics, is that my time up? The fibre optics is an alternative. It's not a complete alternative to 5G wireless technology, but it is an alternative. So, and why are they rushing this? It's another thing to ask the council. And they'll be connecting to commercial data of the Internet of Things. And this starts this summer. So let's come back to the timing again. Yesterday, as late as yesterday, I went onto E&E website. They said they were going to start later last year, early this year. Now, they say they're starting, but it's not known. But Vodafone said, we'll arrive in Bournemouth later this year. That's their words. Now, just think about this. This Smart Place pilot project starts in the summer. As far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, it lasts 2 years. Now, if the pilot project lasts 2 years and Vodafone are starting later this year, why are we having a test? What are they testing? So I think it's time for the Nuremberg Code. What do you think? Yeah, I think it is. Sorry, I would have loved to have had it up there. But I've got the Nuremberg Code in 1947. It was designed to stop human experimentation. And this is from the 5G Space Appeal, but the Nuremberg Code is what it is. And it's enshrined in medical practices throughout the world. Now, think about the residents of Lansdowne. I think that those who live in the Lansdowne area and Bournemouth East, as Mike said, need to have an extra listen to this and get on to the authorities.
Sorry, can I just say, so Bournemouth East, the Lansdowne project will include East Overcliff, Charminster, almost into Folkestone, going that way, and all of the actual Lansdowne area where all the student accommodation is, right the way up to Bath Hill. So when they call it the Lansdowne project, it's kind of a little bit disingenuous because it's much more than that.
Thanks, Mike.
Can we look that up on a map? Is it on the internet?
I think it's on the BCP Council website. Yeah. I can't confirm that, but I'm assuming it is. Yes, thank you. Now, I've got 10 items, and this is the central crux of the discussion, thinking of the residents of the area that Mike's just given us. The Nuremberg Code asks the subjects must consent voluntarily. So how many, is there anybody here want to volunteer to accept 5G? Does anybody know anybody in Lansdowne will put their hand up and volunteer? Does anybody know of any plans to ask them to volunteer? Because if you're asking them to volunteer, you've got to give them all the information. And we don't have all the information. We just know it's going to start in summer. Thank you, Bournemouth CP. The experiment must reveal fruitful results. Now, the only way we can be sure of that is to have it thoroughly monitored. So then, having it monitored, that brings in a lot of other questions, doesn't it? The experiments must be done on animals first. I'm not comfortable with that, but that's in the Nuremberg Code. So I'm only relating that. I'm not saying, I'm not advocating that we, or not advocating about animal experimentation. So 5G was tested on rats, and there was a mass contraction of glaucoma, brain cancer. There's a bigger word than glaucoma, but brain cancer is enough, glaucoma is close enough. And that is one of many studies that prove that exposure to RF frequencies, EMF, 5G, millimeter waves is dangerous. Now, number 4, no physical or mental suffering must be involved. So how can we guarantee that? As only after there's nosebleeds, the sleepless nights, the cancers. No risk of injury, disablement or death. Well, we all know the answer to that one, I think. By the way, those who suffer from hypersensitivity will feel it even more so. So when we say, going back, to number 4, no physical, mental suffering must be involved. If you suffer from hypersensitivity, why not write into the council and say, well, I'm established as having hypersensitivity. I don't want you to switch it on because in accordance with the Nuremberg Code. Now, the other one is a degree of risk cannot be greater than the importance of the problem. So you can weigh that up for yourself. Health and intrusive issues be the benefits of 5G. Downloaded our phones very quickly, communicating with your friends instantly in Antarctica, all these great opportunities for us. Number 7, preparations will safeguard against injury or death. So we need adequate warnings by the BCP from qualified staff. So are they going to put any signs up? Are they going to send out notices to all the residents in the area it covers? We must ask these questions. You must ask these questions. And I will ask. I live in Westbourne, Surrey Road, Westbourne. And I might be picking up a bit. I don't know. I've already asked the questions. Ask the questions. Ask the council. Go to this Nuremberg Code and make sure they comply with the Nuremberg Code. If 1 or 2 do it, they'll just laugh at us. And so far, the council have been virtually dismissing us. And they think they can get away with it. Trust me, they won't.
Not all councillors.
Yes, I say council, not councillors. Yeah, but you're right, it's not all councillors. We have some very fine councillors. I know of one here today. So no offence to all the good guys, because it does put us in the situation of good guys and bad guys. We can't avoid it. If you think 5G is great and you want to go ahead with it, then are you a good guy? A guy in the generic term, sorry ladies. Is it number 8, conducted by scientifically qualified staff? Well, that's a question you can ask them. Are the BCP officers, they call them officers or officer, IGNIP trained. So subject has the right, number 9, subject has the right to stop the experiments. Well, good luck with that one. The people in charge must stop the experiment if they see an untoward effect on the subject. So theoretically, if you're going with the Nuremberg Code, you can write to them and say, well, I'm having regular nosebleeds since you've switched 5G on, I want you to stop it. Or you're in breach of the Nuremberg Code, and I'll send you a notice of liability, I'll speak to the ombudsman, and we'll get it published. So, what do you think we should do? Do you think we should write to the residents in this area and tell them what's going on? Do you think the council are going to do that? It's going to go on their website, but put your hands up anybody that looks on the council website for their information. There, a councillor, yeah, okay, well done. Yeah, there's 4. There's 4. They should have published notices. I said this at the last cabinet meeting to that effect. We're only allowed 100 words, which makes it sound ridiculous. And so you must ask them what they're going to do about the Lansdowne testbed project and how it will affect you. You want all the information, and will they apply the Nuremberg Code? So all you have to do, email your councillor, write to them. I'm going to read out, I'm nearly finished. I'm going to read out a letter from Karen at the back that I put here, concerned Bournemouth resident, that perhaps give you an example of what you can do and some of the concerns. So, how is it possible in present day that new installations, upgrades to mobile phone masts, transmitters, and necessary street furniture remain under the total control and legislation of our BCP planning authority, who are expected to follow the directives of the National Planning Policy Framework? Planning Policy England refers to relevant pages found in the National Planning Policy Framework. Whilst logically the planning department does have a role in positioning of hardware, we believe they are not competent nor qualified to make any decisions on the equipment relating to health and safety for our BC residents, wildlife, or the environment. When related to unseen smog of EMFs in our area, we are not just concerned about unknowns of 5G technology, there is also the ongoing cumulative effects of 2G, 3G, 4G, Tetra, and other signals, smart meters, LED streetlights, and their overall effect. As an example, how easy is it for telecom providers to install their equipment and transmitters? We highlight the case, Dorset Healthcare NHS Trust, Shelley Road. Thank you, Karen. She's at the back there. Let's give her a clap. Right, I did have a lot more, but so I had some up my sleeve. Just in conclusion, let's work together to find a solution. Let's exercise the precautionary principle. Let's rise up to the challenge and battle to ensure all life is protected. We must stop flying blind into the unknown with the unproven safety of 5G. Let's take notice of the 30,000, many of whom is peer received, or so studies, which suggest we must stop 5G now. I hope you'll protect yourselves, family, and indeed all life on Earth by becoming involved. Thank you for your attention.
John Kitson and I were at this industrial conference earlier in the year, or last year, sorry, and every provider was basically saying that their product was 5G. Didn't matter what product it was. You know, I've got 5G toothpaste. I'm exaggerating. No, but the other thing I'd like to say is that 5G, the signal can be interrupted by, now, here's a list, all these incredible, dangerous things that can actually block 5G. Leaves, rain, human bodies, what they laughingly call street furniture, so things like hanging baskets. And that's why when John showed the video of the Ordnance Survey as part of what is the Lansdowne project, effectively, the reason why they were doing that level of mapping was because they had to make sure that the transmitters weren't going to be interfered with by hanging baskets. Now, the other thing I would like to say is, and I did say this at the last council meeting, the whole idea about having autonomous vehicles, in other words, vehicles that are controlled by some sort of artificial intelligence and not by the person sitting in the driver's seat, in Bournemouth is ludicrous. Anyone driving around Bournemouth will realise that it's a hilly area, lots of potholes, the roads are uneven, the roads are narrow, there's lots of people in vehicles who are not particularly good drivers, let's say, a lot of elderly, we have a lot of pedestrians, we have a lot of cyclists, and also the roads aren't straight. So, you know, the actual 5G control of vehicles, to be honest, would worry me. The other thing is, most of us drive around in less than new cars. So my car is 15 years old. So if we say, for example, that people will hang on to cars or you'll buy cars up to the point of 15, that means we've got a 15-year lead time before cars have the ability to be controlled autonomously. Which means that for the next 15 years, there'll be a mix of human and AI-controlled cars on the road. And I think that's a particularly lethal mix. Now, bearing all of that in mind, there is actually one road in Bournemouth, which I mentioned at the council meeting. There is one road in Bournemouth where I think we could actually have autonomous vehicles. And actually, I can name the autonomous vehicle as well. You'll all recognise Bournemouth Promenade as a long, straight road. And there is the Noddy train, which goes along, which I believe could be controlled autonomously. But I think basically in Bournemouth, that's the only one we've got. So those are my own little personal opinions. One other thing, 53,000 satellites being launched, six a month to support 5G. We're talking about trillions of dollars of investment, trillions. So trying to get that backed out is difficult, especially when you consider that when John showed the chap who was talking in favour of new technology, and he actually mentioned that the satellites that are going to be launched would have civilian and military purposes. So it's not just 5G, it's not, as Nick said, they're not launching these satellites so you can download your HD movie in 3 seconds. These are militarised satellites, and I'm not trying to be scaremongering, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. As he said, do your own research, but these are military satellites, and I think I've said more than I should have done. Emma, did you want to say something? Emma wants to say something. Here we go.
One final point that's really important, that's not being touched on yet, is how can we protect ourselves and heal ourselves from the current damage, from the current levels of EMFs. So if I could just pass over to Kay, she's got something to tell us.
Now to the good part of the show. I find not enough people talk about solutions. There are a lot of us that are already ill, not just because of 5G, but because of previous generations of electromagnetic radiation. I found a very good medical paper. It's on, the URL is medicalinsider.com/cardiac3.html. And this is written by a bunch of doctors, so I'm not making any medical claims, they are. They've got at the back of it a whole bunch of protocols, how you can help yourself through natural means, dietary changes, as well as nutrition supplements. There are things that can be done so that if you're ill already through this soup that we're all swimming in, you can get your body back, you can get your health back. In my case, I've changed my diet to a ketogenic diet, which is an extremely low-carb diet, and for some reason it's made massive differences. Look it up, there's thousands of videos on YouTube about keto. I don't want to keep you any longer, just I'll say this website one more time, because for those that want to read themselves into it, because all this electromagnetic soup is creating nitric oxide, superoxide, and peroxynitrates in our body. And those molecules can be fought off or they can be lessened by certain nutrition supplements. The website is medicalinsider.com/cardiac3 .html. Thank you very much.
Hi. I'd just like to give you a timeline of the Bournemouth Council meetings. I think the first meeting was in July. I went along to that, and Mike had prepared a petition and had about 150 names on it.
Yeah, we had a day and a half to get it together.
A day and a half to get it together, and 150 names on it. Then the next stage was the meeting in September, where people gave verbal representations. It was about 50-50 anti-5G and pro-5G. There is a recording, a video recording that you can find on YouTube. How do they search for that? BCP.
I would think actually it'd be better to try and find the link through the BCP website.
Okay, I'll try and find it and put it up on our BCP 5G free page, so you can find it on there. And then the next stage was they had a call for written evidence, and there was a meeting on the 11th of November where they were looking at the evidence, or supposedly looking at the evidence. The Overview and Scrutiny Board, supposedly looking at the evidence. And that was the meeting at which I was so shocked that I decided to run in the election. Because what they'd actually done was they'd extrapolated the figures of how many people had responded. There was over 200 responses, I believe, and they would say something like 90 people had health concerns, 50 people had security concerns, 40 people thought it was a brilliant idea, and they didn't present any of the evidence. What they had instead was they had 4 council employees. There was a public health Dorset representative, there was a planning person advising them about the planning framework, and there were 2 people from the Lansdowne testbed project. So they referred to them for their opinions on all of the queries that had come up. So there was no opportunity for the public to speak, there was no opportunity to say anything that we wanted to say. We were just all sitting there boiling. You sent a note. Yes. And then the next stage was, there was the meeting on the 20th of December, the cabinet meeting, and that's where they approved the plan. Before the results from the call for evidence had actually been presented, and that's happening next week, it's very strange. And at that meeting, I was impressed with a lot of the councillors actually. I think that a lot of them are good people in a bad system and a bad position. And many of them did say that they didn't feel like they really understood it enough. But their hands were tied, because the planning framework says that local councils must make the decisions with a view to advancing the technology, assisting the advance of the technology, and they're not allowed to consider any planning applications on any grounds other than normal planning rules, so they can't consider the health effects. That's outside their remit. So several of them did say that this is an issue that they thought should be taken up at national level, but at local level they had to follow the instructions that were coming to them. So I was reassured that a lot of the councillors just didn't seem well informed enough yet. So I did invite them all to come to this meeting, and I'm going to send them the video. So I would like to offer them this information that we have, and hopefully, well, see what happens. And thank you to the councillors that came today. And I'd just like to introduce a few members of our BCP 5G free team and invite anybody that would like to get involved in the team. We do have these fortnightly meetings, and they are action meetings where we discuss what's going on and how we can help to raise awareness and what actions we need to take. And that is every other Tuesday evening, 6 till 8 p.m. at Bournemouth University. So if you join the BCP 5G free Facebook group, you'll get the event invitations for that. And if you're not on Facebook and want that information, then please sign up to my email list. Well, I've got your details, so I can send it out to you. If you want to meet the team, come to the meeting. Yes, thank you all for coming and for giving up your Saturday afternoon for this. This was the kick-off meeting. We hope that many of you will join our action group, that you will come to the cabinet meeting on Wednesday, that you will become active in this campaign. I've got your details. I will send further information. I have the intention to invite expert presenters, so people that do have even more wonderful information for us. And we could make this a regular event if people would like to do that. We could discuss that at our action group on the 21st of January.